Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by FlexiCharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to a new episode of the ChargePoint podcast. My name is Christoph and I'm your host. Today we're diving into a topic that's quickly becoming strategic for ChargePoint operators, flexibility and the role of BSPs or balancing service providers. Because behind every charging session, there's a bigger system at play. We're producing more renewable electricity than ever, but not always when we need it. At times, there's an excess of cheap low-carbon energy and just hours later, the grid is under pressure again. Bridging that gap between production and consumption is where flexibility comes in. And BSPs are the key enablers making that possible. But what's particularly interesting today is that flexibility isn't just a utility scale story anymore. It's moving closer to the edge into home, businesses, and EV charging infrastructure. That's exactly where Survoltage operates. Jeff Knoepfli, CEO and founder of Survoltage, is building a platform that connects and orchestrates energy usage across both B2C and B2C environments, from residential devices and smart homes to commercial sites, industrial loads, and EV charging assets. The idea is simple but powerful. Turn distributed energy consumption into a flexible, controllable resource, one that can support the grid and unlock new value streams. In this episode, we break down what a BSP actually does, how flexibility markets work, and what it means in practice for CPOs looking to monetize the infrastructure. We also explore how residential flexibility, commercial energy management, and EV charging are starting to converge into one unified system. So if you're a CPO operating energy assets more broadly, this is a conversation that will help you understand where the market is heading and how to position yourself within it. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, hello, Christoph. Nice to be here.
Thanks for taking the time to be in the hot seat today. So let's get started right away, as always, with all my guests. Jeff, can you give us a bit of your origin story that led you to become the founder and CEO of Survoltage?
Yes, of course. I've started my career in cloud computing and IoT infrastructures, and I have seen more and more devices being installed at home, at the office, using more and more electricity, heating systems, EV chargers, batteries. And around 2015, the pace of renewable energy installation was really increasing a lot. And this renewable energy, sometimes you cannot forecast them correctly because they are based on natural elements like wind and solar. And so I have seen a huge opportunity to tackle this challenge and to try to provide behind electricity behind each and every kilowatt hour a digital solution to make sure that we can consume and produce electricity at the right time. And this is what we do at Survoltage. We bring an infrastructure that can connect any kind of electricity consumption or production way to control it.
Right. We'll go into more details, but this alignment between supply and demand is definitely the fundamental prerequisite for a decarbonized system, for sure. So let's come back to the original story. This is also a podcast about entrepreneurs. So what was the core problem you saw in the French energy system that Survoltage set out to solve?
Yeah, this is the core problem is available in France, but it's available wherever there is electricity at the end of the day. The core problem is that we can have at a specific moment in the day a lot available and CO2-free electricity that is being produced. And the problem is that sometimes it is not being used. And several hours later, during the same day, you have all the contrary. You have electricity that is being produced with gas, sometimes even coal, and the electricity is more expensive, and there are a lot of people using it. So this is the core problem that we try to tackle with the software applications and infrastructure that Survoltage is developing.
All right. So can you walk us through a bit the first 6 months of building the company? So first partnership, pilot, MVP, and even just proving the BSP concept, so the balancing service provider concept.
Yeah, we in fact started really B2C, talking to residential customers. This was really something strategic because we do think that at the end of the day, people need to understand what we do in their home or even at the office. I mean, they need to understand that electricity is better to be consumed at some period of the day, which is quite difficult for people because they have not been educated this way, especially when you go Southern Europe. I mean, it's already difficult to understand your electricity bill. So understand that you need to provide flexibility services to the grid by using electricity is really complex. So we started even with a mobile application, Survoltage, that was available and is still available on the French market, that helps you try to understand how electricity works, to see how you consume, how much CO2 you consume for a specific kilowatt hour, for a specific usage during the day. And so once you have this and once you have this education level, you can go more like kind of B2B2C, and you can go more to try to automate what happens inside the house or inside the office, because you understand that the things that you automate something that is good for you, good for your bill, and good for the environment. So basically education, then automation, and so B2C first for Survoltage, and then B2B2C and B2B2B.
All right. And so how did you get your approval as a BSP on the French market? Tell us a bit about the journey.
Yeah. So basically, we have been through all, the regulation and all the market stuff that we need to do, and we become a demand response operator to the French TSO. In France, it's RTE, Réseau de Transport d'Électricité, that has the balancing services and that make the regulation and that also operate the system. So we go through first the capacity mechanisms. Because this was, the low-hanging fruit, the easiest one to operate with. Then we went to what we call in France NEPCO, that used to be NEDEF, to exchange block of load shifting energy blocks, to exchange them on the spot market. And then we moved to the reserves. And so reserve, MFRR, which is what we call adjustment market. And we are even moving to more, challenging reserves, frequency reserve these days.
All right. Yeah. Those are all different levels of frequency regulations. With the different time lapse. There's more information on our website for those who are curious. So what does Survoltage look like today? Team and market footprint for services you're offering?
Yeah. So today we are 15 people in France. Most of them are technical people building this infrastructure to connect any kind of assets consuming or producing electricity. We are, as I said just before, we are a lot exposed on B2B2C and B2B2B kind of customers that have portfolio. We even have, some kind of customers that are, electricity suppliers that are bringing new offers on the market. Kind of 2.0 electricity supplier that provide you with electricity, of course, and also a solution to make sure that you consume the best way and that you can get value on this flexibility market as a no-brainer. It means, as easy as connecting or looking at your appliances that are available to be connected to these flexibility services. This is how we are.
Great. And for the audience, I think sharing also some of my knowledge, being also half French and having also worked in a kind of a bit of a similar space some years ago. I think in France it's interesting that there is really this strong infrastructure because electricity has been also the source of heating for many years, right? So the heating has a big potential in terms of load shifting, right? So that adds to the potential. All right, so let's dig into what is a BSP and why it matters and its potential. So for listeners who are maybe not that familiar, can you again please explain briefly what a BSP does?
Yeah, so the BSP is the balance service provider. That's what it stands for. And basically, this is the entity which, trade the flexibility that is offered by a technical aggregator, an IoT platform, a specific manufacturer. And it ensures that at the end of the day, the load shift is communicated with the BRP that is responsible for, make sure that is responsible for balancing. And so this is the person that at the end of the day value the electricity that is being consumed or produced. So the BSP is really here to enable flexibility to the end user.
Right. Thank you for that. So why is grid balancing becoming more important in a world with growing renewable and decentralization?
Two main factors. Renewable energy, they are relying on natural resources like the wind, the sunlight, and sometimes we can forecast them. We all know that during the day there will be sun or sunlight, so we know that. But sometimes we don't know if in 2 weeks it will be okay. If it will be sunny, we don't know if there will be some wind. This is quite difficult. This comes to weather forecasting. And so if you cannot forecast, correctly, and if you don't know how much electricity we need to pay to buy, you have to control something else. And the other thing that you can control is the consumption. So it's really important that you can have two ways. When there is a lot of electricity available thanks to renewable, then consume it. And when you don't have it, then make sure that you plan correctly the usage of electricity during the day. And this is where technology can help, where digitalization can help to make, a more sustainable world with CO2-free electricity and a really good mix to produce that electricity. And at the same time, there are a lot of decentralized, consumption appliances, more and more appliances for heating systems, heat pumps, for instance, e-mobility, of course, many more EV charging points, EV chargers available. And so a lot of everything has changed in the landscape of the electricity grid. In the 80s, we were more like a centralized way of producing. The consumption was really easy, let's say, with some challenges, of course, to predict. And today we are in a completely different world with decentralized production based on renewable energy that sometimes you cannot control, and a lot of appliances consuming electricity a different way that it used to be in the 80s. So many challenges that make grid balancing really a key element for the future.
Yeah, for sure. The old image I have, which I heard many years ago, was back then on the system level, it would be almost if they knew there was a maintenance service on a big central and a big, for example, nuclear power plant, then they would call all the companies around on the grid and say, the big consumers, you call a couple of really big industries and say, please, can you reduce to more your consumption for some hours, right? That over the phone, right? That's or over the fax machine, basically. Yeah.
Even still the case. 60%. Around in the industry, around 50 to 60% today are still, are done still by phone. Which is quite...
Are they? Oh, really? Okay, cool. Thanks for that insight. Yeah. So it still works. Pick up the phone. So in the past, frequency balancing was handled by big generators. So today, more and more of that flexibility is coming from the demand side asset. Is that, in short, in conclusion, how you see it?
Yeah. So, it was done by big generators. It's good because, it still needs to be there. It will still be there, especially nuclear power plants or other kind of assets will participate to those mechanisms. Though some of them were, kind of not CO2-free generators. And we can wonder if we cannot swap these generators, but something that is, available. The technology is available. A lot of appliances are getting connected to the internet through IoT and that kind of mechanisms. And so why don't we get these, low-hanging fruit benefits? We just need to connect the dots. At the end of the day, these appliances are available and we just need to enable them to the flexibility services. So my guess is that they will be part of, there is a big kind of a mix between these big generators that maybe some of them are CO2-free, and other appliances that can participate to those mechanisms and that are here. They are already being produced, they are enabled, they are there. So we do not have to pay more. We don't have to pay new CO2 for them. So let's use them. So I think this will just be a mix at the end of the day.
Yeah, makes sense, yeah. So let's talk about those dots to connect, right? And so what makes... a good flexibility asset from your perspective? Is it size, speed, location, predictability?
I think that any kind of asset that consume or produce electricity can be managed if we are able to do so without any loss of comfort for the primary usage. Loss of comfort means for a heating system, the goal is not to be cold at home. For an EV charger, at the end of the day, you just need to drive. So it needs to be transparent. As soon as this can be transparent, then, for me, there is no issue when it comes to the size. It can be something at home, it can be something at the office, it can be something on the road. There is no problem. Why? Because at the end of the day, what you need is just to have a technology that make it possible to be a really large-scale solution. And technology can help to have this large-scale solution. Of course, if you have very large assets consuming a lot of megawatts, they're of course good to take, but we should think about something. Energy consumption in Europe is 30% industry, 33% residential, and 35% offices and tertiary buildings. So it means that if we don't want to stop or slow down industry, which is not in the trend that we are trying to do in Europe, we should work on the tertiary sector, on the residential sector. And this is at least 70%. And these are all small assets. And so we should build infrastructures and use technology to make sure that we can get all these small assets to make something huge.
Quick pause. Because if you're enjoying this conversation with Jeff from Survoltage, here's a natural next step. In this episode, we're looking at flexibility through the lens of a French BSP, how assets get connected, orchestrated, and monetized. And if you want to hear how this plays out at scale in other markets, like in the Nordics, go check out episode 37 of the podcast with Mir from Flower, one of the absolute leading Nordic BSPs. There you'll hear how thousands of assets from batteries to over 20,000 EV chargers are already being aggregated and traded in flexibility markets. Now, back to the episode. So tell us, how do you find and onboard these assets? Do you work with aggregators, platforms, or directly with site operators? Tell us.
Yeah, first of all, we do integrate with what exists today. Not all the appliances have been designed for flexibility services. Not at all. They are sometimes far away from being optimal. So basically, we work with what exists today, and what exists today is products that are connected to the internet. And that are being done by manufacturers. IoT that is available through different kind of platforms, kind of technical aggregators, but the main purpose is to control things at home or control things at the office to manage the electricity consumption. And so we do rely on this kind of infrastructure to make sure that at the end of the day, we enable them for flexibility services.
Makes sense. So let's talk a bit money here. So how lucrative / attractive is the French market for a BSP business?
Yeah, so France is a bit particular because we are a lot exposed to nuclear power plants, and maybe you can see that flexibility is not the best place to operate. But in fact, we have an infrastructure that is quite well advanced if we think about it. Smart meters in France, even in houses, are really widespread since 2015, where in other countries in 2025 they don't even have a 10% deployment. So
that's right.
This is the key infrastructure that is necessary to make sure that we can go and have flexibility services, first of all. Then it's quite strange, but in fact today France is the place where in Europe this is the largest budget that is being deployed by the TSO for balancing services. And you can track that on some specific tools, for instance, from the LCP Delta consulting firm. There are specific tools this is, I guess, FlexTrack, where you can see this budget being deployed. And of course, you need to compare, something that is comparable at the end of the day. It means, we need to compare countries with, the same electricity consumption in terawatt hours. And if we compare, for instance, France and Germany, which are completely different energy landscape, France is, is spending 1 billion a year for balancing services, whereas if you go to Germany, it's around 600 million euros for balancing services. So you can see that in France, the budget that is spent is quite large. So it means opportunities for people, going to that market to benefit from flexibility revenues. And my personal opinion is that, on specific market, at some stage, the French government has kind of subsidized capacity mechanism and that kind of things to make sure that there will be people will be able to build new flexibility or to say it infrastructure, so that in the next 10 years we have the sufficient level of flexibility available. The goal is to be ready in 2035 to have kind like a 10 to 15 gigawatt available each and every day and activable.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, for once here, France is really planning well ahead in a very smart way. That's nice to hear. Yeah.
There is a try.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thanks for the tip. We'll definitely take a look at this flex track on LCP Delta. So let's dive into a bit more concretely on BSPs and EV charging and CPOs. So are you seeing French CPOs actively interested in participating in flexibility markets yet?
Yeah. So basically CPOs in France today, they are interested about this topic, but this is not their main, their main interest. They are trying to concentrate on having all their deployment being done and make sure that they are being used, and so their business model works correctly. But let's say there is something interesting in the latest months is that many of them are, interested about storage plus their charging points. And this is really interesting. Why? Because to avoid, a lot of cost for the connection to the DSO, to make sure that they are able to support peak hours, they install on the parkings, for instance, they install a small battery. And the battery, is quite difficult if you think about return on investment. But if you stack the revenue, the revenue that you have from flexibility services, and if you stack the fact that you won't have to wait for a long time for the connection to the DSO plus the cost of that connection, then this is a really good, solution. And so we see a lot of people trying to go this way, and so they are, of course, interested in flexibility services for both the battery but also for the charging points. So really something new. Let's say 2025 or end of 2024, and quite exciting, in fact, because you have the space on the parking lot, you have the space for a battery, you have the space for everything that makes sure that this is a win-win situation for the network, but also for the CPO. Yeah,
but you mentioned when we were talking and preparing that maybe there's some lack of understanding still in education. So how does that how do you see it?
Yeah. So basically, a lot of people are afraid about the fact that the user experience of the CPO customer will be impacted. This is the most important problem. Whereas, there are some demonstrators or there are already active projects, especially in Northern Europe, that are available and that demonstrate that it is completely feasible, even on, fast charging points and that kind of stuff. So this is just, people just need to try to give it a try on the POC and and they will understand that this is completely, this will be the basics. This will be by default, let's say in the next 10 years. But still, even people that know, the ecosystem, the energy ecosystem, they are still a bit not afraid. Maybe afraid is not a good word, but they wonder about what would be the impact.
Yeah. I guess it's about skepticism, right? Or maybe in cautiousness. Yeah, it's fair enough. It's critical infrastructure. So we at FlexiCharge we unveiled a VPP project with Recharge, one of the leading CPOs in the Nordics in September, together with Flower, which is a leading BSP in the region. So do you see this kind of model scaling in France, where it is primarily the chargers, could be also, of course, the batteries delivering some capacity?
Yeah. So as far as I know, in 2025, there is only kind of POC stuff being deployed in France, not what you did with Recharge. Which for me is really good because, this will be this is not a demonstrator, this is something live. And so this will help people to, no longer be worried about what can happen because they will see how it has been done, how it has been deployed, and this will help all other European countries to deploy such solution. So I'm really in favor of having this kind of model, duplicated. And for the moment in France, I guess no one is really kind of in production mode, but I guess this is just a question of time. 2026 will be the time where batteries, especially in France, will scale up, and they will be also part of the CPO's game, I guess.
Yeah, exciting perspective, for sure. So what needs to be in place technically for a CPO to participate in BSP programs? So what kind of control or data do you need from the energy management platforms? Give us a quick lecture.
Yeah. There are several steps for a BSP to monetize flexibility. In fact, we need to predict, we need to propose offers to bid, and we need to activate and monitor. And so based on these three things, it can be done. The prediction, for instance, can be done by the BSP, or can be done through a platform that provides a prediction. And then it really depends on the market that we will try to reach. There are some markets that are more real time, especially when you go closer and closer to the frequency. And so we will need from the platform to provide us with, data from, the electricity usage, power usage, and all that kind of stuff, and with a high frequency rate. But if you don't want to get, these markets, then you can have something even, easier with, kind of capacity mechanisms. On the capacity mechanisms you can get, it's far simpler than having a high frequency power measurement. So basically, what is the good news is that all the charging points, all the chargers, they have the technology for power measurement. They have everything. All the platforms have everything. This is just connecting dots correctly with the BSP. It's just a way of, integration. This is just about integration.
Exactly. Yeah, technical integration. Yeah, and I think that again to drive it back to bring it back to what we did is basically also what we usually say, that what FlexiCharge does is being a technical aggregator. So in the triangle with the CPO, the BSP, and then technical aggregator. Yeah, in that specific case. Yeah. So. So CPOs face already pressures on uptime, user experience, so delivering real fast charging when it says fast charging, and grid constraints. So will flexibility become a nice to have or need to have in the next few years? What's your position?
Yeah, I think this will be both a nice to have and a need to have, but it depends on which segment. I think this for CPOs being on large infrastructure, let's say highways or that kind of things, where you need to charge because you are driving and you need your car immediately, then, it is of course possible. You demonstrated it with recharge, for instance. But at the end of the day, people will just need to drive and they want to use their car. So we should just let them maybe do something to optimize, but this is a nice to have, in my opinion. And on the other hand, this is a must have and even not a need to have when it comes to CPOs, or when it comes to residential usages at home or at the office. We all go at the office around 8 to 9 a.m. We all come back at home at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. And we will all plug, our electrical vehicle at that time. Grids cannot afford having all that vehicles charging at the same time. It's just impossible. So this is absolutely a must-have in that situation. It does not mean that this is not nice to have for CPOs being on large infrastructures.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, of course, the biggest expectation is to have fast charging, as I said. So, and again, it's we know it was part of the discussion with the recharge that of course they didn't want to compromise. And again, there's actually some information in the webinar which we had on this topic with our CTO, which explains how little impact it has actually to get this extra capacity make it available for flexibility. How little it impacts the consumer experience, and of course that has to stay like that. Great. All right. Yes.
To be between experts. I mean, the end user does not have, to know, even on fast charging CPOs, the end user does not need to know. This is just something that we need to adjust between experts, and it needs to be transparent. Even on fast chargers, for me, as you said, this is not a big deal. If your car charges in 20 minutes or 20 minutes and 30 seconds, at the end of the day, it's the same for the end user. There is no big deal there. So I do agree with you.
True. Yeah, exactly. It's about finding the sweet spot. Yeah, the right threshold. Yeah. So looking a bit ahead, what's next for Survoltage in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so Survoltage, continue expanding its operation. We expand more and more with new technologies, new manufacturers, support. Of all of what exists on the shelf, including, of course, electrical vehicles, electrical chargers. We try to have a balanced portfolio, in fact, between consumption and production, so that we are able to play with the two of them. Because if you consume more, it's like producing less, or if you produce more, it's like consuming less. So this is the same at the end of the day. And of course, we try to have a balanced portfolio between residential and offices, tertiary buildings, because we do think this is the perfect portfolio. Because you go to the office during the day, you are at home in the morning, you are at home at the end of the day. And so if you want to have a complete 360 vision, you need to have these two kind of segments inside the portfolio. And to conclude, 2026 is the year where Survoltage is going outside of France, and we will provide our infrastructure as a service to energy actors that will be able to have kind of a really good product to be able to activate flexibility without the hurdle of supporting all kind of appliances and all kind of production or consumption assets.
Fantastic. Any hints on where outside of France, or is it too early to say?
The UK, Spain, the Netherlands, probably, and Belgium. Yeah,
fantastic.
Are targets at the moment.
I understand your choice, knowing the landscape, absolutely, yeah. A brief word, do you expect the BSP market to consolidate, or do you see more and more actually new players coming and attracted by the opportunity?
Yeah, I think that there has been, in the 2-3 previous years, a lot of kind of fintech style players or techie players. And I think that, this is this kind of actors that will consolidate into larger groups. I think that, this larger group will, these small companies, will consolidate into larger existing BSP or BRP or electricity suppliers. I think this is kind of a big number opportunity, and this small company might not be able to support this alone, and they will have to be in a bigger adventure.
Makes sense. All right, and to finish off, maybe a last piece of advice. What would you say to a CPO or battery operators or building owners who are just starting to explore flexibility opportunities?
Yeah, there are a lot of people talking about flexibility these days, and that try to understand everything before even moving forward. My advice is to say, okay, in fact, there are some low-hanging fruits that are already available. You have the hardware, you have the software, you have everything. You just need to connect the dots. Maybe you cannot get all the value at the first stage because getting all the value is too difficult. So why don't you start with, getting the first, going through the first step. The first step will open a line of business. And from what I know, each and every time there is a line of business that is being opened, then the roadmap is far easier to open. And so, of course, I think that step by step, these CPOs will be available to benefit from all the value, but they need to start with something simple. They need to start with one, experiment, one POC, and then, get out of this skepticism that is normal and try to experiment it live rather than just doing the theory. This would be my advice. Say, okay, let's try to move forward. If you think this is not for you because you have tried, that's okay. But maybe you will just want to expand and go and move forward.
Absolutely. Good. Well noted, Jeff. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the podcast today, and looking forward to keeping in touch and seeing where Survoltage is going abroad in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christophe.
So, what should you take away from this conversation? First, flexibility is no longer a theoretical concept. It's becoming a core layer of the EV charging business model. As Jeff explained, the grid is shifting from a centralized, predictable system to a decentralized and volatile one. And in that world, being able to adapt consumption in real time is not optional, it's essential. Second, BSPs are the gateway into that world. They are the ones enabling you to turn your charging infrastructure and increasingly your co-located batteries into revenue-generating flexibility assets, whether through capacity markets, energy trading, or ancillary services. But maybe the most important takeaways for CPOs is this. You don't need to solve everything at once. Start simple, run a pilot, connect your assets, prove the value. Because the technology is already there, chargers, battery, platforms, it's really about connecting the dots and taking that first step. And finally, looking ahead. What we're seeing today, early pilots, co-located batteries, first integration with BSPs, will very quickly become the standard. In a few years, a charging site won't be a place to deliver energy. It will be an active player in the energy system. So the real question is, will you be ready to capture that value? Thanks for listening to the ChargePoint podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. It really helps us grow and bring more conversations like this to you. See you in the next episode.